please give a brief introduction of yourself and what your role is at UMD and how you are involved in quantum.
Sure. So my name is Dean Chang. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at the University of Maryland. What does that mean? I oversee and lead the various innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic development programs and units. And what I mean by that is some are in different colleges, some are in different divisions, and how do you make sure that we're all coordinated and collaborating and ultimately trying to help our students and faculty and community members further their entrepreneurial mindset and take their creative solutions out into the world with bigger impact. And a lot of that is understanding business models, whether it's at a small company, a large company, nonprofit, government, you need to understand business models and how you can have a sustainable way of having resources increase your impact. So that in a nutshell is what I do at University of Maryland. I've been at University of Maryland 18 years, but this is the second half of my career. The first half was 15 years out in Silicon Valley, worked at a tech startup. And so a lot of what I do now is bridging the world of industry and academia, which oftentimes speak different languages, do things differently, and having people who have had experience in both, and we've got a lot of those here at University of Maryland. We're very lucky in that regard, can really help accelerate those translations between those two worlds. And quantum is really just in the very, very early stages of making that transition from the academic world into industry. And so everyone who has some experience on the industry side and academia side can just do a lot to help accelerate that quantum translation into the world.
This is a great transition into our interview then. And the first question that we have is, how did you get into this role?
So I got into this role because, as I mentioned, I was working this startup in Silicon Valley. And interestingly enough, uh, we acquired a company in Maryland. And back then, the state of Maryland actually ran a venture capital fund, and they were an investor in the company that we acquired in Maryland. So suddenly, the state of Maryland was one of our investors in our Silicon Valley company, and they came out to visit us at our headquarters in California and met with myself and our chief financial officer because they wanted to kind of learn more about the company. So that's when I first started making some connections with the Maryland innovation ecosystem. And later, when I moved back to Maryland, those same folks who ran that Maryland Venture Fund told me, hey, now that you're here in Maryland, you've got this wonderful Silicon Valley experience. I know some folks in the University of Maryland who are trying to hire people with exactly that kind of experience to grow the innovation entrepreneurship programs at the University of Maryland. And I was like, okay, I'll check it out. And that was 18 years ago and still here.
I feel like I've heard the story quite a few times, and it's always still so impressive to like rehear it each time. Alrighty. Second, question is, what is your real life superpower?
My real life superpower, I would say, is more about bringing diverse people together um, who can align on some cool project idea that's going to change the world for the better in some way. And specifically, I feel like I've been doing that my entire life and wasn't always for work. It's even when I was in college, I was the person that helped our dorm organize all our intramural sports teams. And it's some of the same flavors, like finding people in different pockets and niches and backgrounds that like would come together and do something really cool together on the court. So I feel a lot of that has translated to what I do today in finding somebody from different disciplines, from different positions up and down the university, whether from industry, whether from government, from academia, and kind of assembling them into a real powerhouse team. So I'd say that's what I would consider my real world superpowers.
Yes, I feel like it's definitely like assembling Avengers of sorts. I know for sure that like I found this position kind of out of nowhere, and then coming in here and seeing the diversity at University of Maryland and just the Innovate team. Like we do quantum, we do I know we have like a company that does skincare.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
like there's so many patents and definitely it's so much to manage, but I feel like you've always done a really amazing job of like keeping everyone involved and it's just so diverse.
Yeah, totally. I like the superpower reference. It's kind of like Avengers or the Justice League or whether you're DC or Marvel.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Inclusivity. If you could choose one rule for everyone in the world to obey, what would it be?
A rule that I'd love everyone to obey. So would not have been a rule I would have been a fan of or ever proposed when I was younger, but now, stage of my career and my life that I'm in, I would say it would be a fantastic rule if everyone had to listen as much as they speak. It could be over the course of a particular day. It could be over the course of some time period. I don't know, maybe it's at a conference or at some sort of gathering. But in general, I've come to learn that there is so much more to learn, and you do that only by listening, because when you're speaking, you're not able to learn anything new. You're just reciting stuff that you already know. That would be my rule. Maybe I should start this company, but these days, when it seems creepily your smartphone's listening to what you talk about because the ads will pop up on something you just recently talked about. Well, so if it's going to be listening to you anyway, it would be cool to have a little histogram showing you over the course of the day what percentage of time you've been listening, what percentage of time you've been speaking, to give you a little snapshot of that. Because I know for myself, I would probably constantly be wrong if I had to guess. Oh, I think I listened this percentage time, and it would probably always be a lot less than what I actually thought. And I think that could be really eye-opening for a lot of folks.
I feel like as a yapper, I definitely talk way too much. And so I'm like, I would need someone to donate their listening time to me or something.
Ooh, there's a marketplace for that. You could have like a little yeah, you could buy listening time. That's interesting. It also makes me think like this shouldn't necessarily be always and forever. It's if everybody intentionally set aside some time period where they tried to adhere to this rule, because it may not be their norm. Because yeah, some people are like yappers, gabbers, whatever else, and don't want to have to change their entire personality. But I think it can be eye-opening if you intentionally lean into that for a specified period of time.
I think this also could probably like go into being like an active listener or like listening with intent.
Yeah. Yes.
Which I
Yes.
think is also really, really important too, where it's just like, yeah, maybe you're hearing the sounds that someone is saying, but you're not actually genuinely processing it and then kind of saying something that is meaningful back. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know that I feel like that gets too complicated for an app, but if it was
Yeah.
possible, that'd be awesome.
Well, your phone could tell you when you were actually actively listening versus just sort of half listening. That would be very well. That would be. I'd like to know that about other people if I'm talking to them. Are they really listening to me? Or are
Yes, as a supervisor of so many people, I think that would be a great thing for you. But also,
they?
I'm like, if they can track our different like sleep cycles, like deep sleep, like light sleep, I feel like that there could probably be a thing of like, are you like intently listening or are you just passively listening?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe there's a business idea. We'll have to put a pin in it and
Patenting it in this recording.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What did you want to be when you were a child?
When I was really young, probably maybe 3 years old or so, I wanted to be a garbage truck driver or a garbage truck person. I just thought it was so cool what they did and the big truck and dumping the garbage in. And then when I developed some maybe better motor skills and the ability to speak a little bit more, I got really into Legos, and loved playing with Legos. And so at that point, I think I wanted to be an architect. I just loved the idea of having some kind of vision. You're imagining something and then make it actually turn into a real thing with Legos. So that's in large part why I think ultimately became an engineer instead of an architect. Um, so uh, initially, back in the day, Legos had just basically your rectangles and your squares, maybe a couple other variations, but it was basically rectangles and squares. So you really had to use your imagination for what you're going to make. And usually there were buildings or houses or pyramids or whatever else, and that was kind of fun. And I think why I wanted to be an architect. But then at some point they introduced wheels. which were like really, oh my gosh, they added wheels. And so now you can make vehicles that can move around and things like that. And then eventually it got me thinking like, for all the reasons I liked playing with Legos and thinking I want to be an architect, it's even more exciting to be able to make things that can move or that have moving parts. And I think that set me down the path towards being an engineer. But I think Legos also have gone too far in that trajectory. And now there's so many specialized pieces. And there are instructions for exactly, these are the 478 steps that you should follow exactly to make this. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. And I think that's sort of changed the way people play with Legos a little bit, which is too bad.
But yeah, I feel like now that we're discussing it, I'm like, I definitely see the connection between like engineering and architecture, where it's just like one is a moving form of the other.
Yeah.
I think when I was younger, my cousins and I, we got like Duplos. And so we used to play with
Mhm.
like Duplos and we would try to mimic the things that were on the box. But otherwise, it didn't come with instruction manuals. And so he was the one who was creative and made things like phone stands or weapons. And I was like, lion.
You just reminded me, this is totally a tangent, but I had forgotten about Duplos until you mentioned, and it brings a smile, and it's very funny. And Lego is one of the few companies that got it right. Like, if you're going to make something for kids, a lot of times when people think, oh, there's the adult version and the kid version, and so the instinct is just to make it smaller. And Lego did the opposite, right? You're not going to make it smaller because kids have not as fine motor control, and so you make it bigger. And same thing was true of toothbrushes. IDEO, this famous story about that, that initially the children's toothbrushes were just smaller, but they needed something with like bigger, with a fatter handle and something to be able to grab on like that. So just had a memory when you mentioned Duplo of playing with Duplo box.
No, I totally agree. I think it's like, yes, their mouths are smaller, so you need the head to be smaller, but the
Yes,
handles need to be bigger
yes,
so that
yes,
they can do it themselves.
exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Alrighty. Our final question for the day is what is your favorite movie of all time?
So this answer has not changed in over a decade, and maybe even two decades. So my favorite movies, I'm going to cheat. I have two movies. One is Shawshank Redemption, and the
Awesome.
other is Shrek.
Yes,
And
another awesome movie.
I feel it's okay to have two because one's animated and one's not. And Shawshank is just best movie of all time. Anytime it's on TV on any channel, doesn't matter where it is, have to start watching it. I still think it's a travesty today that Forrest Gump won Best Picture over Shawshank. That just still pains me. And then Shrek may be as much of a emotional drama as Shawshank. It just is wrapped up in lots of really fun characters and fun lines. But I love, 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 love Shrek.
Yes, definitely. I remember like reading somewhere about how like Shrek is a really beautiful movie because the two main characters are flawed, quote, quote. They don't have like the perfect face, perfect body, whatever it is. And a portion of the movie is learning how to like accept their flaws and honestly really shine from that. And I don't
Yeah.
think many movies have been able to kind of mimic that.
And funny you say, there was a brief period of time where I almost took Shrek off my list and replaced it with Wreck-It Ralph. Ultimately, I decided to stick with Shrek. It was just the OG, and I had to keep it there. But Wreck-It Ralph has a lot of those similar kinds of themes, also with some classic lines, and also with video game references everywhere. And as a big video gamer growing up, that's when it like almost supplanted Shrek, but ultimately did not.
But definitely, feel like all these movies have really like quotable lines, very memorable scenes. But love Wreck-It Ralph as well. Is there like a ranking for the Shrek movies? I think there's been like four of them in total.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for any franchise to continually get better. I'm sure there might be an example or two out there, but usually it's just the first one is so original. You have never thought that this was possible or this concept. And Shrek was definitely like that too. So it'd just be very, very hard for any of the Shrek movies to match it. So I still go with the original. There were some classic lines and bits that were very funny and memorable in two, three, and four. But as a whole body of work, yeah, nothing compares to the original.
I think I agree. I feel like most of my memories stem from one, and then there's like inklings of like two, three, and four. But definitely the original movie is still like the go-to movie for me as well when I like think about Shrek or rewatch it.
Yeah, and I know maybe some people will say that Empire Strikes Back was better than Star Wars, the original, but even then, I don't know. I think just the original Star Wars in terms of its originality and yeah, that's the problem with sequels. Like you can just never recreate that feeling of wonder when something first is revealed and like, oh my gosh. Never even thought that was possible. That is so cool. And so the sequel has the burden and the impossible job of recreating that same feeling of wonder that the first one did.
I will say, maybe it's a hot take, but I feel like Universal does better with sequels than like Disney does out of the two kind of major animation companies.
Oh yeah. Again, do you have an example?
How to Train Your Dragon is Universal.
Oh,
But the only exception is Pixar. Pixar does really good sequels, I think, but Disney itself, I feel like the
yeah.
sequels are not as
Yeah.
like there. We have like Pocahontas or like The Little Mermaid, where it's like, yeah, maybe just stick to the original. We didn't need the the extension.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, How to Train Your Dragon, that was another one that was it didn't come close to supplanting either Shrek or Wreck-It Ralph, but it definitely would be on my Mount Rushmore of animated movies.
Ooh, Mount Rushmore. Oh, that's a good analogy. I like that.
Um,
Is there anything that you feel like we didn't cover that you would like to share?
well, I could talk about animated movies all day, but no, in terms of no, I think we pretty much covered everything from Quantum to How to Train Your Dragon. So there's nothing left.
Thank you so much for meeting with me. Thank you for allowing me to record our interview. And thank you for helping us relaunch our YouTube channel.
Absolutely. This was a blast. Thanks, Winnie. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Have a great day.
All right. Bye.
Bye.